Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin with chapter 45, verse 16. We read the pasuk yesterday. Yosef has just revealed himself to his brothers. And just to read the pasuk again, Vakol nishma beis Paro lemor bo achei Yosef. The call was heard in the house of Paro saying that the brothers of Yosef had come. Vayitav beinei Pharaoh uveinei avodav. And it was good in the eyes of Paro and in the eyes of his servants. So we left off yesterday with the question. It's an interesting thing to think about. Why was it so exciting to Paro and his servants that Yosef was reunited with his family? Sounds nice, but what did they really care? Says the Ramban on Tezayin, Bo achei Yosef, ki Yosef magid lebeis Paro, ki yesh lo achim nichbadim ba'aretz ha'ivrim, ki gonav gunav misham. So first of all, the Ramban is very interested. Bo achei Yosef, the brothers of Yosef had come. The Ramban says that what it means is they always had heard from Yosef that he had this distinguished family, and they lived. And so now it's like when you have a friend who tells you about their sibling who lives like in another country or something. And then finally they come. After 20 years, they come. That's sort of like the context here according to Ramban. Next Ramban, Vayitav beinei Pharaoh v'nei avodav, and it was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and his servants. Ki haya davar lohem l'cherpa, sheyimshol bohem ishnachri eved mibeis wasurim yatsa limloch. This is a topic we've mentioned this week and last week. It was embarrassing to the Egyptians. There's some guy who they got out of prison who's the viceroy of Egypt. Who is this guy? What's his yichus? The Ata, the voil of Achim Nechbadim. Now these distinguished people show up and they introduce themselves, present themselves to the Yosef brothers. Vinoda Q Hagum Lusyatsev name Malachim. Oh, so now he's an impressive person. He comes from an impressive family. Samchu Kulam B'davar. They all were very happy about it. That's just an interesting Ramban to think about. Now let's see what the Sforno says on this pasuk. Sforno on pasuk Tezayin. Vayitav beinei Paro, shechashav shemikan va'elach tia hashgachas Yosef al haaretz lo kashgachas ger manik. This is similar to something we mentioned earlier in the week. The Sforno says the issue wasn't Yosef's yichus. That's not what excited Paro. What excited Paro was as follows. Yosef has nothing tying him to the land of Israel. The land of Egypt, excuse me. The only thing tying him to the land of Egypt is this job. And who knows? Maybe at some point he's just walking out the door. And maybe that impacts the decisions that he's making. But now the way he's going to look at things is someone who hopes to have a future in the land of Egypt. This is where his family is relocated to. This is his place. And he's going to look at things differently now. And that will motivate him at a whole different level to do appropriately for the people of Egypt. So that's the interesting nuance of pshat between the Ramban and the Sforno. Okay. Now, Paro is very, very encouraging of Yosef to bring nice things to his family. And in verse 19, it says, V'atatsu veisa zosasu. And you are commanded, this is what you're supposed to do. Bring from Egypt wagons, for your children and for your wives, and carry your father and come. There's a great emphasis on the pasuk that Paro is commanding Yosef. You are commanded to do this. Take for yourselves. I mean, this is in Yosef's interest. He's getting his family together. Why is Paro talking to him like it's some burden that Yosef is putting on? What is this about? Okay, so let's start with Rashi. Rashi v'ata suvesa mipi lomar lahem. I want you to tell them as follows. Zo sasu, that this is what they should do. Kach emor lehem, tell them as such. Shebir shrusihi, that it's with my permission. So according to Rashi, the emphasis here in the pasuk of Paro saying, these are my instructions to you, is we can certainly relate to this. Paro wants the Egyptians, not the Egyptians, Yosef's family, Paro wants Yosef's family to know that he's actively interested in this happening. He wants them to feel excited about coming to Egypt. Certainly fits in with the idea from the Sforno that we said a moment ago, that he feels like if they come, Yosef will be more established there and Yosef will do an even better job. So that's how Rashi learns the instructions of Paro. Ramban, V'yatotzu v'esasos asu, Omar hadavar b'tzavalo. He says this to Yosef as a command. Midato Musar Yosef, Midato Mosar Yosef, ki einenu sholeach yad b'hon hamelech, v'lo yodai tomu uma. Paro knows his customer. Yosef is not a taker. Yosef is not going to send Air Force One to get his father. It's just not derech eretz. Yosef's going to bring his father. So Paro was concerned that maybe Yosef won't want to, engage with his father, send his father in an appropriate way. So therefore he says to him, I'm instructing you. I'm instructing you that you should do this. So whereas Rashi says Paro wants the family to know that he's behind this, the Ramban says he doesn't even think Yosef's going to do a nice job in sending stuff for his father because he thinks Yosef is not going to want to take the royal wagons. So he says, I'm commanding you to do it because he thinks any less than that Yosef's not going to do it, which is a nice picture of Yosef, sort of humble, unassuming, appropriate. Okay, Sforno, third Sforno on this pasuk. Chuloch emer tzrayim agalos. Ki kishiyiro hagalos muchanos shluchos meitanu. When Yaakov will see the wagons all prepared, sent from us, lo yimtza kolkach makom litchos ulamain. He'll have a harder time refusing the ride. V'chein hayachar kach ba'amro vayaretz v'agalos asher shalach Yosef lo seiso so. So really, really interesting. In the end of the day, this whole thing is going to be so foreign to Yaakov. Yaakov has lived in Israel for a long time. It's unclear if Paro appreciates how much the family associated with living in Israel. And basically, this is the equivalent. Surely, many of us have had experiences with friends, relatives who are disinclined to do something. And sometimes you've got to kind of pack the bags for them. And once the bags are packed, you say to them, okay, so we're all ready to go. Are you coming or not? Not forcing them to come, definitely not, but it's like already moving in this direction. Now all the person has to do is just say yes. So Paro says to Yosef, listen here, you've got to do it this way. It's not enough to send a message and ask if he'd like to come. It's not gonna work. Send the vehicles. Everything is ready, and just say it's time to come. That's what you've got to do. That's what the Sforno was saying. And then he has a really interesting shot in a very famous passage that we'll see, which is that Yaakov sees the wagons and he reacts. V'atachi ruach Yaakov avihem. The spirit of Yaakov came to life, and he said, "Let me go and see him." Now, many of you probably know the very famous medrash, which Rashi cites, that he saw the wagons, and there was a big message in the wagons, which, by the way, because the last thing they learned together was something that if it's a play on words, it connects to Egla Rufa, wagons, agalos, which, just as an aside, is a little bit difficult because we actually read this pasuk. This pasuk says, whose idea was it to send the wagons? This pasuk says the wagons were sent by Paro. Right? Paro says to Yosef, send wagons. So there's definitely a pshat in it, but in any event, it's clear in the pasuk that there's something about these wagons that the moment Yaakov sees these wagons, he's in. What is it about these wagons? Hard to believe that Yaakov is just excited by the grandeur of whatever Yosef sends. It doesn't seem to fit. You could say that Yaakov is confident that Yosef can take care of them. You could say that, but of course, this is the spot for the medrash, that when he sees the wagons, he understands all these deeper connections. But the Sforno has a different shot. The Sforno is saying If he would have just gotten a message, he would have been so happy to hear that Yosef was alive, but he might have said, let me think about it for 3 months and I'll let you know if we're going to come. Why don't you send us some more food first? But because he saw the wagons all ready to go, that's when he says, I'm going to go. So the Sforno says it was exactly as Paro perceived would be the issue. It would be the solution. Very different ideas over here. Okay, let's go on to chapter 46, verse 2. So Yaakov has received the wagons. Yaakov has said the words, I'm going to go to see. Actually, let's see. Chapter 45, verse 28, last verse in chapter 45. For Yomer Yisrael says, Rav, Od Yosef b'ni Choy, this is tremendous. My son Yosef is still alive. Let me go see him before I die. And he brings offerings. And now, verse 2. God said to Israel in the vision of the night, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov. So God calls out to Israel, and he refers to him twice as Yaakov. Frequently, Rashi says, and Chumash says it here as well, that when it says Yaakov twice, it's a language of affection. When he says a name, when God says a name twice, it's a language of affection. Vayomer, and Yaakov says, Hineni, here I am. But here's the very, very obvious question. We had not long ago that God tells Yaakov he's got a new name. It's Yisrael. And indeed, at the beginning of the Pasuk, God refers to him, or the Pasuk refers to him as Yisrael. And then God, when he's actually speaking, calls him Yaakov. Why is he calling him Yaakov? Very important Ramban over here. Ramban on Pasuk base. Yomer Yaakov, Yaakov. Achar sha'amar lo Hashem. Lo yikare shimcha od Yaakov ki Yisrael yeshmecha. To the extent that God said to him, your name is no longer going to be Yaakov, rather your name will be Yisrael. It would be appropriate that he should call him by this honorable name, Yisrael. He changed his name for a reason. And indeed, in this section, he's referred to numerous times as Yaakov. Why is he calling him Yaakov all of a sudden? Avokaro Yaakov, he calls him Yaakov Lirmos, to allude to him, Ki ata lo yashur im Elokim ve'im arashim v'yuchal. The reasoning behind the name of Yisrael is not going to be in play anymore. The idea of Yisrael is because you grappled with man and celestial beings and you overcame. Not now. Avoyia bebeis avadim. You and your family are going to be in a house of slaves. Ad shi'alenu gamalo, until God pulls you up. Kime'ata galas taschabo. This is the beginning of the exile right now. Not even when God is speaking to Yaakov, when they start going down, it says, these are the names of the Jews, Bnei Yisrael, who went down to Mitzrayim, Yaakov and his sons. When they're going down as the children of Yisrael. They're reproducing, they're multiplying, they're glorious. But we're already making the transition. And actually, when they go down there, he's really Yaakov. And that's going to be their life until they get out of Egypt. So it's a very famous, a very obvious question. Why is God referring to him as Yaakov? But this Ramban is really a core idea, not only just as a good shot in the Pasuk, but in terms of sort of the transition that the Jewish people have. And this is the saga of the Jewish people, up and down and up and down and up and down. It's the wheel turning. That's our life. That's our life. But we're still part of this glorious nation. We discussed this morning the idea of Ramban and Sforno, why Paro will be so pleased to hear about Yosef's brothers coming. We discussed why is Paro giving instructions, like a command to Yosef about how to get his father. What's with that? We saw different first about that. And now we discussed Ramban's idea as to why God refers to him as Yaakov when he speaks with him.